This was a case that was of such a magnitude and such an impact on this community. And look, let's be candid here. This is a guy who's a first-year neuroscience PhD candidate student who spent nearly 3 months planning the death of not 1, not 10, but hundreds of human beings from this community. He was only able to kill 12 and injure 70. And for that, we're thankful, but that's the magnitude of this crime. And candidly, if this case comes to the door tomorrow, and I pray to God it does not, there's about a 99.9% chance we'll be right back in there fighting for this. I'm anxious to hear from the jury. I'm anxious to hear what it was that however many of them that didn't get convinced got hung up on, and that'll tell us a lot more. But this is not a case for one person to say, I'm going to take this away from the public. And remember this too, and we can talk about this now. Public defenders came to me back in, well, shortly after I took office to say, just plead this out. And what they said was, here's our reasons why. And I said, here's what I want from you before I decide to make that deal. I want to have my own doctor take a look under the hood and ask this guy questions. I want the notebook, and I want his entire medical and mental health history. And they said, you get none of it. And I said, then that's an easy choice for me. We keep moving forward. And because of that decision, this community knows everything about this case, to a large extent, too. You all have been jurors. You heard every instruction, every piece of evidence that those jurors did. They know nothing more about this case than you do. And that's only because we went through this process. This kind of a crime cries out for the community's involvement in the sentence. We made that possible, and I'd do it again. Sir. Yep. Yeah, that's a fair question. And frankly, there's a lot of victims back here that are with us right now that will be happy to tell you, because they've told me, hey, we didn't agree with your decision to move forward. This was never about 100% of anybody being one way or the other. But I did spend time, and Lisa helped me with this quite a bit, multiple phone calls throughout this process to get input on what they wanted to see and why they wanted to see it. And at some point, a decision had to be made. I made that decision, and we moved forward. And, you know, even for the victims' families that didn't agree with the decision, that wanted this to be over sooner, God, I respect them, and I love them for being willing to stand with us through this process. And I got to tell you, it wasn't easy. You want to see a look of relief on someone's face, you be in that jury commissioner's room when we got back that guilty verdict on, on the guilt phase. Boy, there was a lot of people that were incredibly relieved. But they hung with us despite not agreeing with every decision I made. And I respect that, and I appreciate that. And they'll be able to tell you how they feel about it and how they feel about me and what I did. But there was never unanimity on the decision to be made here. And you wouldn't expect that with this many people. In terms of which part? Just any part of it? I don't know yet. I mean, I want to see, I want to hear from the jurors. I mean, they're part of this community too. They were the part that we wanted to put this case on in front of so they could tell us what they believed a just sentence was. Now, whether it's 11-1 in favor of death or 1-11 in favor of death, these are things you want to know, and that me, as a decision maker that represents this community and criminals, I want to know that too. Hearing those things might give me some indication, but let's be honest about something else. This case went remarkably smoothly. We got through 3 different verdicts very quickly on evidence that was contested mightily by the other side, by a well-funded and very experienced side. So whatever decisions we might have made differently, it wouldn't have kept us, I think, from getting to this point right here. The issue will be, what was it that hung up that juror or those jurors from making death? And by the way, I don't think anybody out there who did sit and watch on TV or on their computers this case as a juror should be critical of them. This is a matter of extreme conscience, and I trust that that's what hung them up. At the end of the day, whatever it was they heard, they believed in their heart, they could not vote for death. I understand that. Sir.
Before your time, your heart, your effort into this case, describe to us your level of disappointment.
You know, it's not personal disappointment. I mean, that'll probably come later, after the beers and stuff. But But right now, it's the disappointment and hearing it as Judge Samore is reading those verdicts, hearing it in those soft sobs and those moans from those family members of the people that we can't ever see again. That's the part that gets me, is I asked them to trust me and to follow me, and I would try to get them to a place that I thought was justice, and I came up short. And that's my fault, and that's what hurts. Not, I think I did a fine job, I guess, at what we did in the courtroom. I'm okay with how we did. I don't know. I feel for them. I'm sorry for them. Yes, ma'am.
If among yourselves and the victim families we couldn't agree on whether death was an appropriate sentence, and if in the country we're divided on it, is it too high a bar to expect the jury to come back unanimously now? Is it just too hard to get a death sentence?
That's a pretty heavy question. I don't think this case is a litmus test on that. I mean, listen, there's a lot of issues that were in this case that made a lot of people, some of you here, question the decision to seek death because there was mental health issues. And I think what we've shown is mental health is not a term that gets you protection from your evil conduct. It is something to be considered and weighed, but this jury moved very quickly through the not guilty by reason of insanity plea, and they moved very quickly through a weighing of the aggravation versus what was almost entirely mitigation based on his parents and these claimed mental health limitations that he had. They moved very quickly through that. So I think there's some positive out of this, but I don't think it's too high of a bar. And I mean, to the extent that someone wants to ask if we should not have that tool in the prosecutor's toolbox, absolutely not. I mean, what I said in that closing yesterday is true. How do you take someone who wants to murder hundreds, was successful at 12, and treat them like someone who killed one? How is that justice on any part of this state or in any part of this country? That is not justice. But this is a decision for the community. The jury made that decision. I will respect and live with that decision.
How important do you think the mental health component was to the decision the jury made?
Well, again, we don't know. And you know what's confounding about it is how, I'll tell you, the part that I was most nervous for was this second phase with the aggravation against the mitigation. And they moved quickly through it. And so I don't know how much it hung them up or how much it showed up in this third phase where it was finally that decision. I don't have any more phases to look to. If I'm going to vote death or life, it's got to be right now. I don't know the answer. I imagine it played a role. But here's the other thing. Who in their right mind would conceive of murdering hundreds of people and then go out and try to carry it out, especially after all this detailed planning? That in and of itself invites some discussion of mental health. But if our answer is anyone that would do something like this could never be eligible for death, is that the standard we want for the community? Is that the standard we want? If you can think of a crime big enough, evil enough, heinous enough, well, then we're going to give you life in prison. That doesn't make any sense to me.